I stood in a hospital room wearing a wedding dress, about to marry a man who couldn't even open his eyes. The machines around his bed beeped steadily. The breathing tube in his mouth made horrible wheezing sounds. His face was covered in scars from the explosion that had put him in this coma 6 months ago. My stepmother stood behind me, her sharp nails digging into my shoulder. "Sign the papers, Riley," she hissed. "Or I'll make sure your brother never gets his surgery." My hand shook as I picked up the pen. This wasn't a wedding. This was a punishment. My family was forcing me to marry a dying soldier just to humiliate me, to get rid of me, to push me out of their lives forever, finally. But as I signed my name on that marriage certificate, the man in the bed, Captain Ethan Cole, suddenly squeezed my hand. His eyes were still closed. The doctors said it was impossible, but I felt it. And in that moment, I knew my life was about to change in ways I could never imagine. But before I tell you what happened next, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know where my amazing viewers are located. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. My name is Riley Anderson, and I'm 24 years old. I grew up in a family that never wanted me. My mother died when I was 5 years old. She got sick with cancer, and even though my father had plenty of money for treatment, he spent it on his business instead. He said the business was more important than one person's life. My mother died 3 months later. After she was gone, my father remarried quickly. Too quickly. He married a woman named Victoria, who already had 2 children of her own. My stepsister Cassandra, who was the same age as me, and my stepbrother Derek, who was 2 years younger. From the moment Victoria moved into our house, my life became a nightmare. Victoria hated me because I reminded her of my mother. Cassandra hated me because my father's money was supposed to go to her, not me. And my father? He just ignored me. He was so focused on his new wife and her children that he forgot he had a daughter of his own. I became invisible in my own home. Growing up, I was treated like a servant in my own house. While Cassandra got new clothes, I wore hand-me-downs. While she went to expensive private schools, I went to the public school across town. While she had birthday parties with hundreds of guests, I spent my birthdays alone in my room. Victoria made sure I knew my place. She would give me long lists of chores every day. Clean the kitchen, wash the floors, do the laundry, polish the silverware. If I didn't finish everything perfectly, she would take away my meals. I learned to go hungry a lot. Cassandra was even worse. She would accidentally spill things on me. She would tell lies about me to her mother, saying I had stolen her jewelry or broken her things. And Victoria would always believe her. My father never defended me. Not once. When I turned 18, I thought things would get better. I thought I could finally leave and start my own life. But Victoria had other plans. "You can leave when you've paid back everything we've spent on you," she announced one day at dinner. "The food, the clothes, the roof over your head. You owe this family at least $200,000. $200,000. It was an impossible amount. She knew I could never pay it. So I stayed, because I had nowhere else to go. The only person in that house who ever showed me kindness was my younger half-brother, Tyler. Tyler was Derek's twin, but he was nothing like Derek or Cassandra. He was sweet and gentle, and he always tried to protect me when he could. When Victoria took away my food, Tyler would sneak snacks to my room. When Cassandra was cruel to me, Tyler would tell her to stop. He was only 22, but he acted like my older brother instead of my younger one. Tyler had a heart condition. He was born with it, and it had been getting worse over the years. The doctor said he needed surgery, an expensive surgery that would cost over $300,000. Victoria refused to pay for it. "That's your father's responsibility, not mine," she told Tyler coldly. "My money goes to my children, not to his." My father could have paid for the surgery easily. He was a wealthy man who owned several successful companies. But he sided with Victoria as he always did. "We need to save money for Derek's business venture," my father said. "Tyler can wait." But Tyler couldn't wait. His condition was getting worse. He was getting weaker every day. Soon he would need that surgery or he would die. I tried everything to raise money for Tyler's surgery. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing during the day, cleaning offices at night, and doing online freelance work whenever I had spare time. But even working myself to exhaustion, I could only save a few $1,000s. It wasn't nearly enough. Tyler was running out of time. Everything changed 3 months ago when our family got involved in a scandal. Derek, my stepbrother, had started a company with money from my father. The company was supposed to develop new technology, but Derek had no idea what he was doing. He spent the money on parties, expensive cars, and trying to impress rich people. The company failed. But worse than that, Derek had taken money from investors and used it for personal expenses. That was illegal. The investors sued. The news picked up the story. Suddenly, the Anderson family name was all over the media for all the wrong reasons. Wealthy family's son caught in fraud scandal. Anderson company collapses. Investors lose millions. My father's other businesses started suffering. People didn't want to work with someone whose family was involved in fraud. We were losing partners, losing contracts, losing money. Victoria was furious. "This is Derek's fault," she screamed at my father. "He's ruined everything." But then she came up with a plan to save the family's reputation. A marriage alliance. There was another wealthy family in our city called the Cole family. They were even richer than us, and they had a perfect reputation. They owned hospitals, real estate companies, and had connections with the government. If our family could connect with the Cole family through marriage, it would restore our reputation. People would forget about Derek's scandal if we were associated with such a powerful, respected family. There was just one problem. The Cole family had a son, Captain Ethan Cole, who was 28 years old. He had been a soldier, a war hero who had saved dozens of lives during his service. Everyone respected him. 6 months ago, Ethan had been on a mission when an explosion went off. The blast injured him severely. He fell into a coma, and the doctors said he might never wake up. The Cole family was desperate. Mrs. Cole, Ethan's mother, believed in old traditions. She thought that if Ethan got married, it might bring him good luck and help him wake up. She put out a quiet request to other wealthy families. She wanted to find a bride for her son. Most families refused. Who would want their daughter to marry a man in a coma? A man who might never wake up? A man who might die any day? But Victoria saw an opportunity. Victoria called a family meeting one evening. We all sat in the dining room, my father at the head of the table, Victoria on his right, Cassandra and Derek on one side, and me and Tyler on the other. "I found a solution to our problems," Victoria announced, a cruel smile on her face. "The Cole family is looking for a bride for their son. If we can arrange a marriage between our families, it will restore our reputation and save the business." Cassandra's eyes lit up. "Oh, are they talking about Ethan Cole? I've seen pictures of him. He's so handsome. When do I get to meet him?" Victoria's smile grew wider. "You won't be meeting him, dear, because you're not going to marry him." Cassandra frowned. "What? Why not? I'm perfect for." "The man is in a coma," Victoria interrupted. "He's been unconscious for 6 months. The doctors say he might never wake up. I'm not going to waste my daughter on a vegetable." My stomach dropped. I suddenly understood where this was going. Victoria turned to look at me. "Riley will marry him." The room went silent. "What?" I whispered. "You heard me," Victoria said coldly. "You've been a burden to this family for years. Now you can finally be useful. You'll marry Ethan Cole, and in return, the Cole family will partner with us in business. It's perfect." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I won't do it." My father spoke for the first time. "You don't have a choice, Riley. This is what's best for the family." "Best for the family?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You want me to marry a man in a coma? A man I've never even met? How is that best for anyone?" "It's best for us," Cassandra said smugly. "And that's all that matters." I looked at Tyler desperately. He looked back at me with sad eyes but said nothing. He couldn't help me. He was too weak to fight them. "I won't do it," I said again, standing up from the table. "You can't force me." Victoria's expression turned dark. "Oh, but we can. You see, Riley, you have two choices. You can marry Ethan Cole, or I will make sure Tyler never gets his surgery. He'll die within the next few months. His blood will be on your hands. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. You wouldn't. Try me, Victoria said, her voice like ice. I looked at Tyler. His face was pale, and he was gripping the edge of the table. He shook his head at me slightly, telling me not to do it, not to sacrifice myself for him. But I couldn't let him die. He was the only person in this family who had ever loved me. Fine, I whispered. I'll do it. Victoria clapped her hands together. Wonderful. The wedding is in 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks were a blur of horrible preparations. Victoria didn't waste any time. She immediately contacted the Cole family and arranged everything. The Cole family was grateful. They didn't care that I was being forced into this marriage. They just wanted their son to have a wife, to have that traditional blessing that might help him wake up. I wasn't allowed to meet Ethan before the wedding. I wasn't even allowed to see a recent picture of him. All I knew was that he was a soldier who had been injured and was now in a coma. Victoria bought me a wedding dress, but it wasn't a nice one. It was a simple, cheap dress that looked more like a costume than a real wedding gown. She did it on purpose to humiliate me further. You're marrying a half-dead man, she said when I complained. You don't need a fancy dress. Cassandra thought the whole thing was hilarious. Imagine, Riley the charity case is going to be married to a vegetable. It's perfect. She would laugh and I would have to stand there and take it. Derek didn't care at all. He was just relieved that the family was fixing its reputation. My father continued to ignore me, as he always had. The only person who was upset about the marriage was Tyler. Riley, you don't have to do this for me, he said one night when he came to my room. I don't want you to throw your life away. I'm not throwing my life away, I lied. I'm saving yours. That's all that matters. Tyler hugged me tightly. You're the best sister anyone could ask for. I hugged him back, trying not to cry, because the truth was, I was terrified. I was about to marry a stranger, a man I'd never met, a man who might never wake up, and even if he did wake up, he might hate me for being forced on him like this. But I had no choice. Tyler's life was worth more than my happiness. The wedding day arrived too quickly. There was no ceremony, no guests, no celebration. This wasn't a real wedding. It was a transaction. Victoria drove me to the hospital where Ethan was being kept. My father didn't even come. Cassandra and Derek stayed home. It was just me, Victoria, and a lawyer who would witness the signing of the marriage certificate. We walked through the hospital halls, and I felt like I was walking to my own funeral. Finally, we reached Ethan's room. Victoria pushed open the door, and I saw him for the first time. Captain Ethan Cole was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines. There were tubes everywhere, in his mouth, in his arms, connected to his chest. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring his heart rate, his breathing, his brain activity. His face was covered in scars. Burns from the explosion, the nurse had told me. His dark hair was messy, and his skin was pale from being indoors for so long. He looked broken, and I was about to become his wife. Mrs. Cole was in the room, along with Mr. Cole. They both looked at me with a mixture of hope and desperation. "Thank you for doing this," Mrs. Cole said, taking my hands. "Thank you for giving my son a chance." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't giving him a chance. I was being forced to do this. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Let's begin." There was no officiant, no vows, no rings. The lawyer simply laid out the marriage certificate on a table next to Ethan's bed. "Miss Anderson, if you'll sign here," he said, pointing to a line on the paper. My hand was shaking as I picked up the pen. This was it. Once I signed this paper, my life would never be the same. I looked at Ethan lying in the bed. He looked so still, so lifeless. The doctor said he could hear us, that coma patients were sometimes aware of what was happening around them. I wondered if he could hear this, if he knew what was happening. I wondered if he would hate me for it. "Hurry up," Victoria hissed behind me. I took a deep breath and signed my name, Riley Anderson. The lawyer took the paper and made a note. And now, according to tradition, the bride will place her hand in the groom's hand. I hesitated, then slowly reached out and took Ethan's hand. It was warm, which surprised me. I had expected it to be cold. His hand was large and rough, the hand of a soldier who had worked hard his entire life. I held it gently, feeling awkward and sad. And then, something impossible happened. Ethan's fingers moved. They curled around my hand, squeezing gently. I gasped and looked at his face. His eyes were still closed. The machines continued beeping at the same steady pace. But I had felt it. He had squeezed my hand. "Did you see that?" I said, looking at Mrs. Cole. "He moved. His hand. It's just a reflex," the doctor in the room said calmly. "Coma patients sometimes have involuntary muscle movements. It doesn't mean anything." But it didn't feel like a reflex. It felt purposeful. Mrs. Cole was crying happy tears. "It's a sign. He knows. He knows he's married now." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Can we finish this? I have things to do today." The lawyer completed the paperwork, and just like that, it was done. I was married to a man I had never spoken to. A man who might never wake up. Mrs. Cole hugged me tightly. "Welcome to the family, Riley. You're part of the Cole family now." I tried to smile, but I felt numb. Victoria grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. "Come on. We're leaving." "Wait," I said, looking back at Ethan. "Shouldn't I stay with him? I mean, I'm his wife now." Victoria laughed cruelly. "Stay with him? Riley, he's in a coma. He doesn't need you here. You've done your job. Now let's go." But Mrs. Cole stepped forward. "Actually, I would like Riley to stay. She's family now, and family should be together." Victoria's expression darkened, but she couldn't argue. The Cole family had all the power now. "Fine," Victoria said coldly. "Stay here with your vegetable husband. See if I care." She turned and walked out of the room, leaving me behind. And just like that, my old life was over. Mrs. Cole arranged for me to have a room at the hospital near Ethan's. It was small but comfortable, much nicer than my room at my father's house had been. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I kept thinking about Ethan's hand squeezing mine. The doctor had said it was just a reflex, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. Around midnight, I got up and walked to Ethan's room. The hospital was quiet, and most of the lights were dimmed. I pushed open the door to his room and walked inside. The machines were still beeping steadily. Ethan looked exactly the same as he had during the wedding. I pulled a chair up next to his bed and sat down. "Hi," I said quietly, feeling ridiculous for talking to someone who couldn't respond. "My name is Riley. Your wife now, I guess. I'm sorry we had to meet like this. I'm sorry you didn't get a choice in who you married." The machines beeped. Ethan didn't move. "I don't know if you can hear me," I continued. "The doctors say maybe you can. So I'm just going to talk, and you can listen if you want." I told him everything. About my family, about how they had forced me into this marriage, about Tyler and his surgery. I told him about my mother, about growing up feeling unwanted and invisible. I talked for over an hour, and Ethan never moved. But somehow I felt better. Like maybe, even if he couldn't respond, someone was finally listening to me. When I finally finished talking, I reached out and took his hand again. "I promise I'll take care of you," I said. "Even though we don't know each other, even though this marriage wasn't our choice, I promise I won't abandon you. You saved people your whole life. The least I can do is stay by your side now." And then, for the second time that day, I felt his fingers move. This time, they didn't just squeeze. They intertwined with mine, holding my hand like he was trying to tell me something. My heart started racing. "Ethan? Can you hear me?" But there was no other response. His eyes stayed closed. His breathing stayed steady. I sat there holding his hand for the rest of the night, hoping and praying that somehow, some way, the soldier would wake up. Because I had a feeling that when he did, everything would change. And I had no idea how right I was. The days after the wedding blurred together. Every morning, I would wake up in my small hospital room, get dressed, and go straight to Ethan's room. I would sit by his bedside, talking to him, reading to him, or sometimes just sitting in silence while the machines beeped their steady rhythm. Mrs. Cole visited every day. She was kind to me, much kinder than my own family had ever been. She would bring me food, ask how I was doing, and thank me over and over for marrying her son. "You're an angel, Riley," she would say. "I know this situation isn't ideal, but you're giving my son a chance. That means everything to me." I didn't feel like an angel. I felt like a girl trapped in an impossible situation, trying to make the best of it. Mr. Cole was quieter than his wife, but he was kind too. He owned several businesses and was always busy, but he made time to visit Ethan at least 3 times a week. He would stand at the foot of the bed, looking at his son with such sadness in his eyes. "He was such a strong boy," Mr. Cole told me once. "Always protecting others, always putting himself in danger to save people. That's what happened in that explosion. He pushed 3 of his men out of the way and took the blast himself." "He's a hero," I said softly. "Yes," Mr. Cole agreed. "And heroes deserve to wake up." Victoria called me every few days, but never to ask how I was doing. "The Cole family better be investing in our business soon," she would say. "That's the whole point of this arrangement. Don't forget why you're there." "I haven't forgotten," I would reply quietly. "Good. And don't get any ideas about being part of their family for real. You're just a placeholder until the vegetable dies. Then you'll come back home where you belong." Her words hurt, but I had learned a long time ago not to show Victoria when she hurt me. That only made her crueler. Cassandra called once, just to gloat. "How's married life with a corpse?" She laughed. "I bet you're having so much fun. Does he snore?" "Oh wait, he can't." I hung up on her. The only calls I looked forward to were from Tyler. He called me every other day, and we would talk for hours. "How are you feeling?" I always asked him first. "I'm okay," he would say, though I could hear the weakness in his voice. "Stop worrying about me. Tell me about you. Are the Coles treating you well?" "They are," I said honestly. "Mrs. Cole is wonderful. She treats me like a real daughter." "That's good," Tyler said. "You deserve a family that treats you right." "How's the surgery planning going?" I asked. There was a pause. "Victoria scheduled it for next month. The doctors say if I can hold on until then, the surgery should help." "You'll hold on," I said firmly. "You're strong, Tyler. You're going to get through this." "I hope so," he said quietly. "I want to see you again, Riley. I want to see you happy." "I'll be happy when you're better," I told him. After we hung up, I would go back to Ethan's room and sit by his bedside, thinking about Tyler and hoping he would be okay. 2 weeks after the wedding, something changed. I was sitting in Ethan's room, reading a book out loud. It was a fantasy novel about dragons and knights, and I thought maybe Ethan would enjoy it since he had been a soldier. I was in the middle of an exciting battle scene when I noticed something. Ethan's heart rate had increased. I looked up at the monitor. His heartbeat, which had been steady at 60 beats per minute for weeks, was now at 75. I stood up, alarmed. "Ethan? Can you hear me?" The heart rate climbed to 80. I pressed the call button for the nurse. Within seconds, a nurse rushed in. "His heart rate is going up," I said quickly. "Is that normal?" The nurse checked the monitors and examined Ethan. Sometimes coma patients have fluctuations in their vitals. Could be nothing, or it could be a sign that he's becoming more aware. "I'll get the doctor." Dr. Palmer, Ethan's main physician, came in a few minutes later. He ran several tests checking Ethan's reflexes, his brain activity, and his responses to stimuli. "Well," Dr. Palmer said slowly, "his brain activity has increased slightly over the past few days. Subtle, but it's there. This could mean he's starting to come out of the coma." My heart leaped. "Really? He's waking up?" "Not yet," Dr. Palmer cautioned. "But these are positive signs. Keep talking to him, keep engaging with him. Sometimes, familiar voices and stimulation can help bring coma patients back." After the doctor left, I sat back down next to Ethan, my hands shaking with excitement and fear. "Did you hear that?" I said to him. "You're getting better. You're coming back. I know you can do this, Ethan. I know you're strong. I took his hand, and this time I was sure I felt a slight pressure in return. He was in there, fighting to come back, and I was going to be here when he did. 3 weeks after the wedding, Victoria showed up at the hospital unannounced. I was in Ethan's room when she walked in, her high heels clicking on the floor. She looked around the room with disgust. "Still wasting your time here, I see," she said. "What do you want, Victoria?" I asked tiredly. "I came to remind you of your purpose," she said coldly. "The Cole family hasn't invested in our business yet. You need to push them to do it faster. They're dealing with their son being in a coma," I said. "Business isn't their priority right now." "Well, it should be," Victoria snapped. "That was the deal. You marry the vegetable and they invest in us. Make it happen, Riley, or there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" I asked, though I already knew. Victoria smiled cruelly. "Tyler's surgery is expensive. It would be a shame if something happened to delay it. Maybe the hospital would suddenly have scheduling conflicts. Maybe the insurance would mysteriously fall through. You know how these things happen." I felt rage building inside me. "You would let Tyler die just to get your business deal?" "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family," Victoria said. "You and Tyler aren't my real children. You're just leftovers from your father's previous life. So yes, I would let Tyler die if it meant securing my children's future." I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. "Get out." "Excuse me," Victoria said, raising an eyebrow. "I said get out," I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. "This is my husband's room. You're not welcome here." Victoria laughed. "Your husband? Riley, he's in a coma. He's not really your husband. You're playing pretend." Before I could respond, Mrs. Cole walked into the room. She must have been visiting and heard the commotion. "Is everything all right?" Mrs. Cole asked, looking between Victoria and me. Victoria's expression immediately changed. She put on a fake smile. "Oh, Mrs. Cole, how lovely to see you. I was just visiting my stepdaughter and her husband." Mrs. Cole looked at me, and I could tell she sensed something was wrong. "Victoria, isn't it? Riley's stepmother." "Yes," Victoria said sweetly. "I just wanted to make sure Riley was settling in well with your family." "She's settling in perfectly," Mrs. Cole said, her voice firm. "Riley is a wonderful addition to our family. In fact, she's been so devoted to Ethan that I consider her a true daughter now." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. "How lovely." "Riley," Mrs. Cole said, turning to me, "why don't you come with me? I want to show you Ethan's childhood home. I think it's time you learned more about your husband." It was clearly an excuse to get me away from Victoria, and I was grateful for it. "Of course," I said quickly, grabbing my bag. As we walked out, I heard Victoria call after me. "Don't forget what I said, Riley. Handle it." I didn't respond. I just kept walking. Mrs. Cole drove me to the Cole estate, which was a massive mansion on the outskirts of the city. It was surrounded by gardens and had a fountain in the front courtyard. "This is where Ethan grew up," Mrs. Cole said as we walked inside. "I thought you might want to see it, to know him better." She led me through the house, showing me pictures of Ethan as a child, as a teenager, as a young soldier. In every picture, he was smiling, strong, confident. "He was always protecting people," Mrs. Cole said, stopping at a picture of teenage Ethan with his arm around a smaller boy. "That's his younger cousin, Marcus. Marcus was being bullied at school, and Ethan stood up for him. Got into a fight with 3 older boys. Came home with a black eye and a broken nose. But he was proud because Marcus was safe." I smiled, looking at the picture. Even as a boy, Ethan had been a hero. Mrs. Cole showed me Ethan's room. It was exactly how he had left it before he joined the military. Posters of action movies on the walls, shelves full of books about history and warfare, a desk covered in old photos and medals. "He loved his country," Mrs. Cole said softly. "He loved serving, protecting people. That's all he ever wanted to do." I sat down on his bed, looking around the room, trying to imagine what kind of person Ethan was. "Mrs. Cole," I said quietly, "can I ask you something?" Of course, dear. And please call me Linda. Linda, I said. Why did you really want Ethan to get married? Was it just tradition? Or was there another reason? Linda sat down next to me. She was quiet for a moment before answering. Ethan's doctor said that coma patients sometimes respond to emotional stimuli, she said. Love, connection, family. These things can sometimes reach a person when nothing else can. I thought if Ethan had a wife, someone who would sit with him and talk to him and care for him, it might help bring him back. But you didn't know me, I said. How did you know I would actually care? Most people would just sign the papers and leave. Linda took my hand. I didn't know. I took a chance. But from the first day I met you, I could see the kindness in your eyes. I could see that you were someone who had been hurt, and people who have been hurt often have the biggest hearts. I trusted that you would care for my son, even if you didn't know him. Tears filled my eyes. I do care for him. I know that sounds crazy because we've never even spoken, but I do. I sit with him every day and I tell him stories and I want him to wake up. Not just for you or for my family's arrangement. For him. He deserves to wake up. Linda hugged me tightly. You're exactly the kind of person I hoped you would be. That night I had a strange dream. I was standing in a dark forest, and I could hear someone calling my name. The voice was deep and masculine, and it sounded desperate. Riley. Riley, where are you? I walked through the trees, following the voice until I came to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a man. He was tall and muscular, with dark hair and intense eyes. His face was covered in scars, but even with the scars he was handsome. It was Ethan. You found me, he said, relief flooding his voice. Ethan? I said, confused. How is this possible? I've been trying to reach you, he said, walking toward me. I've been trapped in the darkness for so long, but your voice is the only thing I can hear. You're pulling me back. I don't understand, I said. Keep talking to me, Ethan said urgently. Keep telling me stories. Keep holding my hand. You're the only light I have in this darkness. Don't give up on me. I won't, I promised. I'll never give up on you. Ethan smiled, and suddenly the forest started to fade. I'm coming back, Riley. I just need a little more time. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding. It was just a dream. It had to be just a dream, but it felt so real. The next morning, I rushed to Ethan's room. I had to tell him about the dream, even if it sounded crazy. I sat down next to his bed and took his hand. Ethan, I had a dream about you last night. You told me to keep talking to you, to not give up. I don't know if it was really you or just my imagination, but I want you to know, I'm not giving up. I'm going to be here every single day until you wake up. As I spoke, something incredible happened. Ethan's fingers tightened around mine. But this time it wasn't just a small squeeze. His entire hand gripped mine firmly. Ethan, I gasped, standing up. Can you hear me? His eyelids started to flutter. I pressed the call button frantically. Somebody help. He's waking up. Nurses rushed in, followed quickly by Dr. Palmer. They surrounded the bed, checking monitors and calling out medical terms I didn't understand. His brain activity is spiking, one nurse said. He's responding to stimuli, another said. Dr. Palmer leaned over Ethan. Captain Cole, if you can hear me, squeeze the hand of the person next to you. Ethan's fingers squeezed mine again, even tighter this time. Good, Dr. Palmer said. Now try to open your eyes. For a moment nothing happened. And then, slowly Ethan's eyelids began to open. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and as they focused on the room, they landed on me. He was looking at me. Ethan Cole was awake, and the first person he saw was his wife. A woman he had never met before, a woman who had been forced to marry him, a woman who had sat by his bedside for weeks hoping he would come back. Our eyes met, and I saw confusion in his gaze, but also something else. Recognition. Like somehow, even though we had never met, he knew me. Riley, he whispered, his voice rough from weeks of not being used. I gasped. You know my name? He squeezed my hand again. I heard everything. Dr. Palmer and the nurses spent the next hour examining Ethan, running tests, checking his vitals. His awakening was being called a miracle. Patients who had been in comas for 6 months rarely woke up this suddenly or this completely. "Your brain function is remarkable," Dr. Palmer said, shining a light in Ethan's eyes. "Can you tell me what year it is?" 2024, Ethan answered, his voice getting stronger. "Do you remember what happened to you?" "Explosion," Ethan said. "I was on a mission. There was a device. I pushed my men out of the way. That's the last thing I remember before waking up here." "And do you know where you are now?" Dr. Palmer asked. "Hospital," Ethan said. Then his eyes found me again. "And my wife is here." Dr. Palmer looked surprised. "You know about your marriage?" "I heard everything," Ethan repeated. "Every day, Riley would come and talk to me, tell me stories, hold my hand. I could hear all of it. I just couldn't respond." Tears streamed down my face. The dream had been real in a way. He had been trying to reach me. After the doctors finished their examination, they left to call Ethan's parents and give us some privacy. Ethan looked at me with those intense dark eyes. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" I asked, wiping my tears. "For not giving up on me," he said. "For staying. For caring about a stranger in a coma." "You're not a stranger," I said softly. "You're my husband." Ethan smiled slightly, though I could see the confusion and questions in his eyes. "I heard your story, about your family, about how they forced you into this marriage." I looked down, embarrassed. "Yes, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you would have chosen." "Don't apologize," Ethan interrupted. "None of this is your fault. You were as much a victim in this situation as I was. But now you're awake," I said. "And you probably we can get the marriage annulled if you want. I'll understand." "No," Ethan said firmly. I looked up in surprise. "No, I heard everything you said to me," Ethan said. "Every story, every confession, every promise. You told me about your brother Tyler and how you married me to save his life. You told me about your family and how they treated you. And you promised you would take care of me, even though we were strangers." He reached out and took my hand again, and this time he was the one holding mine, not the other way around. "You kept your promise," he said. "For weeks you sat by my bed. You talked to me, read to me, held my hand. You gave me something to fight for when I was trapped in that darkness. Your voice was the only thing I could hear, and it pulled me back." "Ethan," I whispered. "So no," he said firmly. "We're not getting an annulment. You're my wife, Riley, and I'm going to be your husband, a real husband. And together, we're going to make your family regret everything they did to you." His words sent chills down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked. Ethan's eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw the soldier in him, the warrior who had fought in battles and saved lives. "I heard what your stepmother said to you," he said, his voice cold. "How she threatened your brother. How she treats you like you're worthless. How she's just using you to save her family's reputation." "You heard all that?" I asked, shocked. "I heard everything," Ethan repeated. "And now that I'm awake, I'm going to make sure they pay for what they've done to you. Starting with making sure Tyler gets his surgery, and ending with destroying their precious business deal." "But the marriage was supposed to help your family's business connect with mine," I said. Ethan smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone planning revenge. "Oh, we'll connect with them all right," he said. "We'll connect with them just long enough to watch their whole world fall apart." Before we could talk more, the door burst open and Mrs. Cole, Linda, rushed in, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan," she cried, running to the bed. "My baby boy, you're awake." "Hi, Mom," Ethan said, his voice softer now. He hugged his mother tightly. Mr. Cole walked in more slowly, but I could see the emotion in his eyes. "Son," he said, his voice breaking. "Welcome back." "Thanks, Dad," Ethan said. Linda pulled back and looked at me. "Riley, you did it. You brought him back." "I didn't do anything," I said, embarrassed. Yes, you did, Ethan said firmly. She saved me, Mom. Without her, I don't think I would have made it back. Linda hugged me tightly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As I hugged her back, I looked at Ethan over her shoulder. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. It was intense, protective, almost possessive, and I realized something that made my heart skip a beat. Ethan Cole wasn't just grateful to me. He was on my side. And when someone like Ethan Cole was on your side, your enemies should be very, very afraid. Over the next week, Ethan's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The doctors couldn't believe how quickly he was getting better. Within 3 days, he was sitting up on his own. Within 5 days, he was walking around his hospital room with help. By the end of the week, he was demanding to be discharged. Captain Cole, you need to take this slowly, Dr. Palmer warned. You've been in a coma for 6 months. Your body needs time to adjust. I'm fine, Ethan said firmly. I've been through worse. I need to get out of here. I was sitting in the corner of the room during this conversation. I had barely left Ethan's side since he woke up. We had spent hours talking. Him asking me questions about what happened while he was unconscious. Me learning about his life before the accident. I learned that Ethan was not just a soldier. He was a decorated captain who had served 3 tours overseas. He had saved dozens of lives, received multiple medals for bravery, and was respected by everyone who knew him. But despite all his achievements, Ethan was humble and kind. He didn't brag about his accomplishments. Instead, he asked me questions about my life, my dreams, my fears. What do you want to do with your life, Riley? He asked me one afternoon. I thought about it. I've never really had a choice before. My stepmother always told me what to do. But if I could choose, I think I'd want to help people. Maybe work at a charity or a nonprofit. Something that makes a difference. Ethan smiled. That sounds perfect for you. You have a good heart. What about you? I asked. What do you want to do now that you're awake? Ethan's expression turned serious. First, I'm going to make sure Tyler gets his surgery. Then, I'm going to deal with your family. On the 8th day after Ethan woke up, he called a meeting with his father. Mr. Cole came to the hospital, and I was invited to join them in Ethan's room. Dad, I need you to do something for me, Ethan said directly. Anything, son, Mr. Cole replied. Riley's brother Tyler needs heart surgery. It costs $300,000, and her family is refusing to pay for it. They're using the surgery as leverage to control Riley. I want us to pay for it. Mr. Cole didn't hesitate. Consider it done. I'll have the money transferred to the hospital today. I gasped. Mr. Cole, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Mr. Cole interrupted gently. You're family now, Riley, and family takes care of each other. If your brother needs surgery, he'll get it. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand. Call Tyler. Tell him the surgery is happening. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and called Tyler. He answered on the second ring. Riley, is everything okay? Tyler, I said, my voice breaking with emotion. Your surgery is paid for. The Cole family is covering everything. You're going to be okay. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard Tyler start to cry. Are you serious? He whispered. I'm serious, I said, tears streaming down my face. You're going to live, Tyler. You're going to be fine. Riley, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, I interrupted. Just get better. That's all I want. After I hung up, Ethan pulled me into a hug. I cried into his shoulder, releasing weeks of fear and worry. He's going to be okay, Ethan murmured. I promise. And I believed him. 2 days later, Ethan was finally discharged from the hospital. The doctors were still concerned, but Ethan insisted he was ready. Where do you want to go? I asked him as we prepared to leave. Back to your parents' house? No, Ethan said. We're going to our house. I blinked. Our house. I bought a house 3 years ago, Ethan explained. Before my last deployment. I never got to live in it because I was overseas and then, well, the coma. But it's ours now. Our home. The word home made my heart flutter. I had never had a real home before. Ethan's parents drove us to the house. It was a beautiful 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood, with a front yard and a garden. It's perfect, I breathed as we pulled up. Ethan smiled. Wait until you see the inside. He was right. The inside was even better. It was furnished but simple, exactly the kind of place a soldier would choose. Comfortable, practical, but warm. The master bedroom is upstairs, Ethan said, leading me up. There are 2 bedrooms. You can take whichever one you want. I looked at him in surprise. We're sleeping in separate rooms? Ethan's expression was careful. Riley, I know we're married, but we barely know each other. I don't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. We'll take things slowly. Get to know each other properly. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we can be a real married couple. I felt a rush of gratitude. Ethan could have demanded his rights as a husband. He could have taken advantage of the situation. But instead, he was being respectful and kind. Thank you, I said softly. You don't need to thank me for treating you with respect, Ethan said. That should be the minimum. That evening, as Ethan and I were having dinner, my phone rang. It was Victoria. I looked at Ethan nervously. It's my stepmother. Put it on speaker, Ethan said. I want to hear this. With trembling hands, I answered and put the phone on speaker. Riley. Victoria's voice was sharp and angry. What did you do? What are you talking about? I asked, confused. Tyler's surgery. Someone paid for it. The hospital called and said the entire amount was covered by an anonymous donor. Was it the Coles? Yes, I said. They paid for it. You had no right. Victoria shrieked. That surgery was our leverage. How am I supposed to control you now? Ethan's jaw clenched, and I could see anger flashing in his eyes. You don't need to control me anymore, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I'm not part of your family. I'm a Cole now. Don't you dare get uppity with me, Victoria snapped. You're still that pathetic little girl who... Ethan grabbed the phone. Mrs. Anderson, this is Captain Ethan Cole, Riley's husband. There was dead silence on the other end. You're awake, Victoria said, her voice shocked. Very much so, Ethan said coldly. And I want to make something very clear. Riley is my wife. That means she's under my protection now. If you or anyone in your family threatens her, uses her, or hurts her in any way, you will answer to me. Do you understand? You can't threaten me, Victoria said, but I could hear fear in her voice. That wasn't a threat, Ethan said calmly. It was a promise. Stay away from Riley, and stay away from Tyler. They're both under the Cole family's protection now. He hung up without waiting for a response. I stared at him in shock. Ethan. She needed to know, Ethan said. People like her only understand strength. Now she knows that if she messes with you, she messes with me. I felt something warm bloom in my chest. For the first time in my life, someone was standing up for me. The next morning, Ethan called a meeting with his father at our house. Dad, what's the status of the business deal with the Anderson family? Ethan asked. Mr. Cole pulled out some papers. We were supposed to invest $5 million into their company in exchange for a partnership. The contract was drawn up but not signed yet. We were waiting for you to wake up before finalizing anything. Good, Ethan said. Here's what I want you to do. Sign the contract, but add some specific clauses. What kind of clauses? Mr. Cole asked. Ethan smiled, and it was that cold, calculating smile I had seen in the hospital. I want performance-based clauses. The Anderson company has to meet certain targets and standards within 6 months, or the partnership can be dissolved, and they have to pay back the investment with interest. Mr. Cole raised his eyebrows. That's aggressive. Most companies can't meet those kinds of demands. Exactly, Ethan said. The Anderson company is already failing because of the scandal. There's no way they can meet strict performance targets. They'll fail, and when they do, we'll pull out. We'll get our money back, and their company will collapse completely. But won't that make our family look bad? Mr. Cole asked. Like we're taking advantage of a struggling company? Not if we document everything properly, Ethan said. We'll show that we gave them every opportunity to succeed. We'll provide resources and support. But if they fail anyway, that's on them, not us. I listened to this conversation with growing amazement. Ethan wasn't just planning revenge. He was planning strategic, calculated revenge that would be completely legal and completely devastating. There's one more thing, Ethan said. I want weekly progress reports from the Anderson Company, and I want Riley to be the one delivering them to us. Why? Mr. Cole asked. Ethan looked at me. Because I want Victoria and her family to see Riley standing next to me. I want them to see that she's not their victim anymore. She's a Cole. She has power now. And every time they see her, I want them to remember that they created their own downfall by treating her like garbage. A week later, the contract was ready to be signed. Mr. Cole arranged a meeting at the Cole Company headquarters, a massive building downtown. Victoria, my father, Cassandra, and Derek all came to the meeting. I stood next to Ethan, wearing a beautiful dress that Linda had bought me. When Victoria walked into the conference room and saw Ethan standing there, alive, awake, and very much in control, her face went pale. Captain Cole, she said, forcing a smile. How wonderful to see you recovered. Mrs. Anderson, Ethan said coldly, not bothering to shake her hand. My father looked between Ethan and me. For the first time in years, he actually looked at me like I existed. Riley, he said awkwardly. You look... well. Thank you, I said stiffly. Cassandra stared at Ethan with wide eyes. She had clearly expected him to still be in a coma, or at least weak and injured. Instead, he stood tall and strong, every inch the decorated soldier. Shall we begin? Mr. Cole said, gesturing to the table. Everyone sat down and Mr. Cole presented the contract. As he explained the terms, I watched Victoria's face carefully. At first, she looked smug, like everything was going according to plan. But as Mr. Cole explained the performance clauses and the strict targets, her expression changed to confusion, then worry. These targets seem ambitious, my father said carefully. They're industry standard for a company of your size, Mr. Cole said smoothly. Surely you're confident in your ability to meet them? My father and Victoria exchanged glances. They couldn't refuse without admitting their company was in worse shape than they'd let on. Of course, Victoria said, forcing another smile. We'll meet those targets easily. Excellent, Ethan said. Then you won't mind signing. The contract was signed and just like that, the trap was set. 2 weeks after the business meeting, Tyler had his surgery. Ethan and I went to the hospital to be there for him. When I saw Tyler being wheeled into surgery, I grabbed Ethan's hand without thinking. He's going to be okay, Ethan said firmly. The surgery took 6 hours. Ethan sat with me the entire time, holding my hand, bringing me coffee, distracting me with stories from his military days. Finally, the surgeon came out. The surgery was a success, she said with a smile. Tyler did great. He'll need a few weeks to recover, but he should make a full recovery. I burst into tears of relief. Ethan hugged me tightly. See, he murmured. I told you he'd be okay. When Tyler woke up a few hours later, I was the first person he saw. Riley, he said weakly, smiling. You look happy. I am happy, I said, crying and laughing at the same time. You're going to be okay. Tyler looked past me at Ethan, who was standing in the doorway. You must be Captain Cole, Tyler said. Call me Ethan, Ethan said, walking over. It's good to finally meet you properly, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler said, his voice emotional. Thank you for saving my sister. And thank you for saving me. Riley's the one who saved me first, Ethan said, looking at me. I'm just returning the favor. Over the next month, the Anderson Company struggled to meet the targets in the contract. Every week, Victoria or my father had to come to the Cole Company offices to deliver progress reports. And every week, Ethan and I would be there to receive them. It was humiliating for them, and I could see the resentment building in Victoria's eyes. The manufacturing division is behind schedule, Victoria admitted during one meeting, her voice tight. We've had some complications. What kind of complications? Ethan asked, his tone businesslike but cold. Equipment failures, staffing issues, Victoria said vaguely. In other words, mismanagement, Ethan said bluntly. Victoria's face turned red, but she couldn't argue. Each week, the reports got worse. Sales were down. Production was behind. The scandal had damaged their reputation more than they'd admitted, and customers were leaving. After 2 months, it was clear the Anderson company was failing. 3 months after the contract was signed, Victoria showed up at our house unannounced. Ethan and I were having dinner when the doorbell rang. Ethan answered it, and I heard Victoria's voice. I need to speak with Riley. Now. Anything you need to say to Riley, you can say in front of me, Ethan said coldly. Victoria pushed past him and stormed into the dining room where I was sitting. This is your fault, she screamed at me. You and your husband set us up. Those targets were impossible to meet. They were industry standard, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. You said you could meet them. You knew we couldn't, Victoria shrieked. You did this on purpose. You're trying to destroy our family. No, Ethan said, walking up behind Victoria. You destroyed your own family. You did it when you committed fraud. You did it when you mistreated Riley for years. You did it when you tried to use her like a pawn in your games. All we did was give you enough rope to hang yourself. Victoria's face twisted with rage. You think you're so smart, Captain Cole? You think you've won? I know I've won, Ethan said. Your company is failing. Your reputation is ruined. And Riley is free from you. Yes, I'd say I've won. Victoria turned to me, and for a moment, I saw real hatred in her eyes. You were always ungrateful, she hissed. We took you in. We fed you. We gave you a home. And this is how you repay us. You made me a servant, I said, my voice shaking but strong. You starved me. You humiliated me. You treated me like I was worthless. And then you tried to marry me off to a man in a coma just to save your own reputation. I don't owe you anything. Victoria raised her hand like she was going to slap me, but Ethan caught her wrist before she could. Don't, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Touch my wife. Victoria yanked her hand back, looking genuinely frightened for the first time. You'll regret this, she said, backing toward the door. Both of you will regret this. The only one with regrets here is you, Ethan said. Now get out of my house. Victoria left, slamming the door behind her. I stood there shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. Ethan pulled me into his arms. It's okay, he murmured. She can't hurt you anymore. What if she tries something? I asked. Then I'll handle it, Ethan said firmly. I promise, Riley. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. And as I stood there in his arms, I realized something. I was falling in love with my husband. This man who had been a stranger 3 months ago. This man who had woken up from a coma and immediately started fighting for me. This man who treated me with kindness and respect and protected me like I was precious. I was falling in love with Ethan Cole. And from the way he looked at me, I thought maybe, just maybe, he was falling in love with me too. For months after the contract was signed, the Anderson company was on the verge of bankruptcy. They had failed to meet every single target in the contract. Sales had dropped by 60%. 3 major clients had pulled out completely. The scandal from Derek's fraud case kept resurfacing in the news, and no one wanted to do business with them anymore. Mr. Cole called a meeting at the Cole Company headquarters. This time, it wasn't just a progress report. This was the end. Ethan and I arrived early. I wore a navy blue dress that Linda had helped me pick out. Professional, elegant, and powerful. I looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom, not like the scared girl who had been forced into a wedding 4 months ago. When the Anderson family walked in, they looked defeated. Victoria's hair wasn't perfectly styled like usual. She had dark circles under her eyes. My father looked 10 years older, his face lined with stress. Cassandra and Derek looked angry and resentful, but also scared. Thank you for coming, Mr. Cole said professionally. I'll get straight to the point. The Anderson Company has failed to meet the targets outlined in our contract. According to the terms we all agreed to, the Cole family is exercising our right to dissolve the partnership and demand repayment of our investment. My father's face went white. Repayment? But we don't have $5 million. We've already spent it trying to save the company. That's not our problem, Ethan said coldly. You signed a contract. You agreed to the terms. Now you have to face the consequences. Victoria stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You set us up to fail. Those targets were impossible. They were the same targets your company claimed you could meet, Mr. Cole said calmly. We have your signatures on the contract agreeing to them. We also have documentation showing that we provided resources, consulting, and support. You simply couldn't deliver. Because the scandal destroyed our reputation, Derek shouted. That wasn't our fault. Actually, it was, Ethan said. The scandal happened because you committed fraud. You brought this on yourselves. Cassandra glared at me. This is all because of her. Isn't it? Riley put you up to this. She's getting revenge because she's petty and jealous. I stood up, my heart pounding but my voice steady. No, Cassandra. This isn't revenge. This is justice. For years, your family treated me like I was worthless. You used me, humiliated me, and tried to throw me away when I was no longer useful. All I did was marry a good man who saw my worth. Everything that's happening to you now is because of your own actions, not mine. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. You ungrateful. Careful, Ethan interrupted, standing next to me. Remember who you're talking to. Riley is a Cole now. She has the power and protection of my entire family. You can't touch her anymore. The room fell silent. Finally, my father spoke, his voice defeated. What happens now? You have 30 days to repay the $5 million plus interest, Mr. Cole said. If you can't pay, we'll be forced to seize your company assets to recover our investment. That will destroy everything, my father whispered. Yes, Ethan said simply. It will. 2 weeks later, Victoria made one last desperate attempt to save herself. She showed up at our house again, but this time she wasn't angry. She was begging. Riley, please, she said, standing on our doorstep with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything I did to you. I was cruel and wrong. But please, you have to help us. Talk to Ethan. Convince him to give us more time. I stared at her, feeling nothing. Once, her tears might have made me feel guilty, but not anymore. No, I said simply. Please, Victoria cried. Your father will lose everything. Cassandra and Derek will have nothing. Is that what you want? What I want, I said quietly, is for you to feel what I felt all those years. Powerless, helpless, like no one cares about you. Victoria's tears stopped. Her expression turned cold again. So this is revenge. No, I said. Revenge would be me actively trying to hurt you. I'm not doing that. I'm just not saving you. There's a difference. Your father is still your father, Victoria said desperately. Doesn't that mean anything to you? He stopped being my father the day he let you starve me, I said. He stopped being my father the day he chose you and your children over me over and over again. He made his choice. Now he has to live with it. Ethan appeared behind me, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. This conversation is over. Leave our property, Mrs. Anderson, and don't come back. Victoria looked at both of us with pure hatred before turning and walking away. With Tyler fully recovered from his surgery, Ethan suggested something that made my heart soar. Tyler should move in with us, he said one evening over dinner. Really? I asked, surprised. Of course, Ethan said. He's your brother. He's family. And from what you've told me, he deserves a real home where people actually care about him. I called Tyler immediately. Are you serious? Tyler said, his voice filled with hope. I can really live with you? Yes, I said, tears in my eyes. Pack your things. Come home. Tyler moved in 3 days later. Watching him walk into our house with his suitcase, seeing the smile on his face as Ethan showed him his new room, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. "Thank you," Tyler said to Ethan later that evening, "for everything. For the surgery, for taking care of Riley, for giving me a home. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Ethan said. "You're family now. That's what family does." Tyler looked at me with tears in his eyes. "You found a good one, Riley." "I know," I said softly, looking at Ethan. And when Ethan looked back at me, I saw something in his eyes that made my heart race. Love. That night, after Tyler had gone to bed, Ethan and I sat on the back porch, looking at the stars. "Riley," Ethan said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Here with me." I looked at him in surprise. "Yes, I'm happier than I've ever been in my life." "Good," Ethan said, "because I need to tell you something." My heart started pounding. "What is it?" Ethan took my hand. "When I was in that coma, trapped in the darkness, your voice was the only thing I could hear. Every day you would come and talk to me, tell me stories, hold my hand, and slowly, in that darkness, I started to fall for you." I gasped. "Ethan, I know it sounds crazy," he continued. "Falling in love with someone I'd never met, someone I couldn't even see. But your kindness, your strength, the way you kept fighting even when life was so hard for you, I fell in love with all of it. I fell in love with you." Tears streamed down my face. "I fell in love with you too. I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude or that you were just being kind. But it's more than that. You make me feel valued, protected, loved. For the first time in my life, I feel like I matter to someone." Ethan cupped my face in his hands. "You matter to me. You matter more than anything." And then he kissed me. It was soft and gentle and perfect. My first real kiss. My first kiss with someone who actually loved me. When we pulled apart, Ethan smiled. "So, Mrs. Cole, what do you say we make this marriage real?" I laughed through my tears. "I thought it already was real." "It is," Ethan said. "But I want to do it right. I want to take you on dates. I want to court you properly. I want to earn your love, not just receive it because we were forced into this situation." "You've already earned it," I said softly. "You earned it the moment you woke up and chose to protect me instead of resent me." Ethan kissed me again, and this time it was deeper, more passionate. And I knew, without a doubt, that I had found my home. Not in a house, but in him. The 30-day deadline came and went. The Anderson family couldn't repay the money. The Cole family seized the company assets as outlined in the contract. Within a week, the Anderson company declared bankruptcy. Everything was sold off to pay debts. My father lost his wealth, his reputation, and his business empire that had taken decades to build. Victoria, Cassandra, and Derek had to move into a small apartment. No more mansion. No more luxury cars. No more expensive clothes and parties. They were left with almost nothing. The news covered the story extensively. Once wealthy Anderson family falls from grace after business failure. I watched the news reports with Ethan and Tyler. Part of me felt sad seeing my father's face on TV, looking broken and defeated. But another part of me felt free. "Do you feel guilty?" Tyler asked me quietly. "A little," I admitted. "He's still my father, even if he was a terrible one." "You gave him chances," Ethan reminded me. "Years of chances to be a better father. He chose not to take them. This isn't your fault." He was right. I had spent years hoping my father would see me, would love me, but he never did. And that was his choice, not mine. 2 months after the company collapsed, my father showed up at our house. He looked so different from the powerful businessman I remembered. He wore old clothes, had gray in his hair, and looked tired and defeated. "Riley," he said when I opened the door. "Can we talk?" I looked back at Ethan, who was standing in the hallway. He nodded, telling me silently that he was there if I needed him. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want?" "I wanted to apologize," my father said, For everything. For not protecting you from Victoria. For not being there for you. For treating you like you didn't matter. I crossed my arms. Why now? Because you lost everything? Because you need my help? No, my father said quickly. I don't expect you to help me. I know I don't deserve it. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I was a terrible father. You deserved so much better. I felt tears prick my eyes. These were words I had wanted to hear my entire life. You're right, I said quietly. I did deserve better. I deserved a father who loved me, who protected me, who chose me over his new wife's cruelty. But you never did that. I know, my father said, his voice breaking, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. We stood in silence for a moment. I forgive you, I finally said. My father looked up in surprise. You do? Yes, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I'm tired of carrying anger. I'm tired of being hurt by you, so I'm letting it go. I forgive you. Thank you, my father whispered. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you in my life, I continued. You had decades to be my father. You chose not to. It's too late now. My father nodded sadly. I understand. I hope someday you'll be happy. I already am, I said simply, and I meant it. A year after Ethan woke from his coma, we had a real wedding. Not a ceremony in a hospital room with no love and no choice. A real wedding with flowers and music and all our friends and family. Linda cried happy tears as she watched me walk down the aisle in a beautiful white dress. Mr. Cole beamed with pride. Tyler stood next to Ethan as his best man. And Ethan looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. When we said our vows this time, we meant every word. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to love you for the rest of my life, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise to stand by you, to support you, to love you through everything, I said, tears streaming down my face. We kissed, and everyone cheered. This was what a wedding should be. Love, joy, choice. At the reception, Tyler pulled me aside. I'm so proud of you, Riley, he said, hugging me tight. You survived everything they threw at you, and you came out stronger. We both did, I said. We're both survivors. Later that night, Ethan and I danced under the stars. Mrs. Cole, he murmured in my ear. How does it feel to be married for real this time? Like coming home, I said, resting my head on his chest. I love you, Riley, Ethan said. I love you too, I replied. And as we danced, I thought about how far I had come. From the scared, broken girl who had been forced to marry a stranger in a coma, to the strong, loved woman who had found her true family. My stepfamily had tried to humiliate me by forcing me to marry a comatose soldier. But instead, they gave me the greatest gift of my life. They gave me Ethan. And when he woke up, he didn't just make them regret what they did to me. He showed me what real love looked like. 3 years after our real wedding, Ethan and I sat on our back porch, watching our daughter play in the yard. Her name was Hope, because she represented everything good that had come from our unlikely beginning. Tyler had graduated from college and was working at the Cole Family Company, healthy and strong. He visited every Sunday for family dinner. The Anderson family had faded into obscurity. I heard through mutual acquaintances that my father was working a normal job now, living simply. Victoria had divorced him and moved to another state with Cassandra and Derek. I never heard from any of them again, and I was okay with that. What are you thinking about? Ethan asked, pulling me close. About how my family thought they were punishing me by making me marry you, I said. But really, they gave me everything I ever wanted. A loving husband, a real family, a home. Ethan kissed my forehead. Their loss was my gain. Do you ever regret it? I asked. Waking up to find yourself married to a stranger? Never, Ethan said firmly. You saved my life, Riley, in more ways than one. You pulled me out of the darkness, and you gave me a reason to live. You did the same for me, I said softly. Our daughter ran up to us, her dark hair flying behind her. Daddy, Mommy, Watch me. We watched as she did a cartwheel in the grass, giggling when she landed. This was my life now. Love, laughter, family. My stepfamily had tried to break me. Instead, they led me to the man who would spend the rest of his life building me up. They had forced me to marry a soldier in a coma, thinking it would be my punishment. But it became my salvation, and their regret. Thank you so much for watching this entire story. I hope you loved Riley and Ethan's journey as much as I loved telling it. Please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way. Drop a comment below and tell me what you thought of this story. Did Riley get the justice she deserved? Should she have forgiven her father? I want to hear all your thoughts. And don't forget to hit that like button. See you in the next story.